Hi, I'm Ed Edmonds, and on this episode of Monster Lab, we're going to show you how to sculpt a face mask that custom fits your face exactly. And then as the series goes on, we're going to show you how to make this. Dude, back off. I'm keeping my brains. Anyway, no! Okay, let's get started. Now, I've made a little armature here to sculpt on. There's busts you can buy that are made out of fiberglass or plaster or whatever. This is just so you can get started right away. You can use those things and they're very helpful, but I'm going to show you how to get the measurements and all. So I've just taken a piece of plywood. I've made this so you can move it, get the angle you want, and screw it all down. It's just something that's solid to work off of. Now this sculpture, there's some tricks to this, and we're going to make this mask so you can slip it on and use your own eyes, your own mouth, and yet not have those typical, ooh, I see where the mask stops and the face starts, and there's some tricks in paint we're going to do, but at the end, this thing you just slip it on and it's like you're that character without seam lines. That's the goal. So I'm going to get started here, and we're using, as usual, wet clay, W-E-D clay, and it works the best. So I'm just going to take some slabs and throw them on here. Oh wait, I forgot a very important thing. Now this is how you can get away without a plaster bust. So I'm going to measure my head and draw guidelines. So I need height. And width. So I'm just using the calipers. These are very handy because you can try to do it with a tape measure, but it's very difficult. And I'm just kind of splitting the difference and centering the blocks. That can't be. Sometimes stuff looks weird, trust the math. So it's a good idea to double check, make sure you're really there. Yeah, it looks weird to me, but that's what it's saying. So then you just kind of round out into a kind of an egg shape, basically. And that's the shape I'm going to be working with. However, since there's going to be some thickness to the latex, and since there's some shrink, I'm going to go out and give this thing about 1/4 inch all the way around. You know, rubber moves and bends a little, so you don't have to be super perfect, but having a little allowance. And so that outer line, that's going to be what I'm going to sculpt to. I'm going to try to keep the clay within that outer line. So now roughly that's the size of your head. With a little extra. I'm going to wet this just a little. It's not super necessary, especially with something like this, not likely to slip. It just gives you that little bit of a suction power that's helpful. And also, you want to make sure all the way along that you're sticking down the clay and pushing it so that you don't like throw a big block on, there's a big air bubble, and it's not really sticking well. The other thing about this sculpture is I'm going to come up over, you know, some of these are little face masks, which you can do. I'm going to sculpt the information so that you can slip it on and have artificial hair, or you could cut it in, and I'll show you how to do that, around your hairline, and so it's just a small face mask. But I'm going to sculpt it with the additional clay, which will be eventually be rubber, so that you can put a wig on it or whatever you want to do if the monster calls for it. And this is going to be pretty human based, like a, you know, newly rotted within a couple weeks. So not a real super old zombie, but dried up and fairly unappealing. So now I'm going to use a little tool with the teeth around the edge, and this is just to shape it. And, you know, just think about how your profile works. Your head is basically an egg with the pointy side in front this way, and then an egg with the pointy side on the bottom this way. So just kind of think of that as you sculpt. And so it gets smaller as you go down the bottom of the face. There's also a certain roundness this way. So, you know, you'll need to allow for that and so that it'll fit your face later on. There's still some caliper measurements we're gonna do here in a minute. Okay. So I'm taking now this hard right angle and I'm finding that line. Make sure I haven't see, as I cut in, I can see it. And I've gone over a little bit here and there. Now I'm going to do some additional caliper measurements, and this is to figure out eye placement and breathing and so forth, and nose and so forth. So I'm going to start my estimate, the back of the head here, and try to come down. I'll just do a series of things. So let's start with eyes. Boy, that's hard to believe, isn't it? This is the thing when you're measuring, you get surprised. But if you just go by what you think, our eyes are generally not trained well enough. So there's something weird here to me. I'm trying to go back as far as this, and then go to right at my pupils. And that's what it's telling me. So I'm going to have to listen to that, even though I don't like it. it seems a little weird. The positioning's weird. But it's, let's see, maybe I'm too far back. No, that's actually worse. All right, so here's my brow. Let's do my start of my nose here. Yep, it's telling me right. Well, that's where it's telling me my eyes are, and that's really, it's bugging me. We're going to go with that for the time being. So if my eyes are here, that means my brow's going to be here. Now this, boy, you got to be careful with this stuff. Make sure your eyes are closed, but you can feel the middles of your eyes, and that's how far apart they are. So I need to get my center line. So I'm going to say we're right about there. And then my eyes are on this line, and they're right about here. So whether I like it or not, that's where they are. Okay. So if you need some help, it might be helpful to have somebody make sure that you're in the right position, but I am pretty darn sure that's where those eyes belong. And perhaps my brain's grown or something, we don't know. All right, so here's my eyes. And I'll try to keep that. You want to make sure that you don't obscure those for a while, because you're going to need that positioning. And next we're going to do the nose. Okay. So that's the base of my nose. And double check this stuff, because you know, if you accidentally did that or that, so maybe test it twice. Try to make sure. Now this one's showing me a little bit lower. Let's see. Nope, it's right in there. Okay, that's the bottom of my nose. Now I'm going to get the top of my nose. Should be pretty close to eye line. Okay, so that is the start and finish of my nose. I'm going to do lips. Now, normally this wouldn't be important, but you're trying to make this thing fit you exactly. So it becomes important that it's, a regular Halloween mask, the mouth could be down here. Who cares? Because you just slip it on, it covers it. This is a little bit different. We're fitting this thing so that it exactly fits you and your eyes line up. And I'll go into more of it as we go along. But now it's starting to look right. I know that the eyes are close to center. They're always just a little bit higher. Also, this has probably not been filled out, so it was looking a little weird, but it's starting to look right now. So this is my mouth, and this zombie's happy. No, zombies aren't happy. What am I saying? Okay, let me check that one more time. Okay, now let me get that nose on. So I don't lose that placement. Now, as you go into the look of the thing, you can move around and stuff somewhat, but you're going to want to keep like this mouth, you're going to want to keep that mouth right where it is. The nose could get a little longer, it could shrink back, that's fine, but the mouth is important to keep that line, because we're going to want this to line up with your mouth later on. So this is just kind of a placeholder right now. And this is going to be made so that you can cut it in different ways. You can free up your mouth completely, or we're going to make it so that you can have the rubber mouth, but it talks. We'll get into all of that, but this is going to be a custom design mask to fit your face, and the minute you put it on, it looks great. It's not like, oh, I have to do eye makeup, I have to do this and that, I have to, whatever. It's going to be made to fit you perfectly. So now I'm putting on the brow and cheekbones, and we're going to use those to disguise where it fits against your face. We're going to roll these under, and since you're customizing this, we can do that where it would be more difficult if it was just a generic mask supposed to be on anybody. Basically what I'm doing is just getting little lumps of clay that are able to be pushed in and connected to the sculpture. Now, one thing that's kind of important too is to look at the things sideways every so often. I think I'm good. Make sure you've got a natural, because a face tends to go out in the center a little bit. So this line tells me the horizontal line, and this is the vertical line, so I can come back and know right where that point is, so I can dig in a little bit. So now I'm going to start digging down into the eye socket a little bit. You don't want to go too deep, because you don't want to have to deal with rubber, poking in the eyes. But part of the technique is where that rubber of what I'm going to show you here, where that rubber comes in. It'll be away from your eyelids and things, so your real eyes show and blend in with the mask pretty seamlessly. But you don't want to go too deep. We've added some clay up here, and so we're going to dig in a little, because your eyes do go in, and we want this sculpture to kind of come in and fill them. So just kind of best guess it. This is not something you'll be able to caliper, unfortunately, because you're adding clay out here. But you know how eyes sink in pretty much, and they can't sink in like zombie eyes, because you got a real face under there. So the sunken in thing is going to all happen out here. We're going to bring the bones out. So that's there, and then these lines are going to keep you true. So at any point I can go back and, all right, here's my horizontal, and here's my vertical. And these two lines are going to help you keep track where your pupil is, and that's pretty darn important as you go along with the sculpture. You don't want to lose track of that. Now the nasolabial fold, it goes from the tip of your nose. Usually it doesn't go down like this. We're going to take this down. So it's kind of like a puppet mouth. So we'll be able to cut this away and have it look good, because there's information in the sculpture, it wraps around. If you didn't run this all the way down to the chin, then you'd have a cut line that would be real obvious. And so we're gonna be playing some tricks here with the mask so that it can talk. So right now I'm finding all the positioning and heights and stuff. It doesn't look like much yet. We'll go into detailing here in a second, but I'm just getting some of the bone structure I'm going to want, cheekbones. So it's all about positioning right now, not the look of it. I'm wanting to have the nose collapsed, but I have to allow room for your nose, because this got to fit you. So I'm going to have to play a few games with that, and so that I don't go too far in, so there's room for your nose, but you still end up with this you know, like the nose is rotting away sort of look. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little more fine detail, and I can go in a little because, you know, we've added some thickness, but not too much. Most of it's going to have to be built out since this is made to fit your face. So here we go. Also, it's helpful to have reference, and pictures are nice, but to have a skull sitting around in your lab somewhere is very helpful to be able to see anatomy. I'm going to make use of this. So I'm still doing fairly large anatomy and stuff. I'm getting some of the wrinkles and things in. But one of the tricks, and this is why this is going to look better than something you'd buy at the store that wasn't custom fit to your face, is I'm coming in and I'm hooking under. So you're not cutting away, you're cutting after the curve, so you don't see the cut line around these eyes. So it will end, the mask will end, but it'll end under a curve, if that makes sense. That way, when it goes on your face, it's kind of hitting the skin around your eye, and there's no point where it's, oh, I can see where they cut that hole out with the scissors, because you're cutting around a curve. The same sort of principle is going to apply this nasolabial fold. I'm going to cut all the way down, so this can be like a puppet mouth, and we're going to use hair to cover up some of this, but it's going to allow this to be completely cut away, and you won't see it. I'll have a fairly deep groove in there, And so you could leave the mouth on if you want, but that's one of the tricks I'm going to use in order to make this a talking mask in more than one way. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to keep refining the shapes here, and hopefully it'll start to look like a good monster. So the nose, as I was working on it, I realized it wasn't quite looking right, and then I realized the reason is for the nose to eat away that much, it would be much more rotted and bony, and since you've got your face underneath, it was a disconnect. So I brought back in the nose. I'm going to make it look all kind of rotty and twisted, and then these lips, I'm going to get them wrinkly and bring some more rot into it around different places. And so those, wasn't really counting on either of those two changes, but I do a lot of creating in the sculpture. I start with a rough idea and work it, and that's fine. I mean, if you want to work it out really good in a drawing first, that's fine too, but sometimes it just, the sculpture speaks to you. He whispers to me. I don't know if you heard him, but
you look like you could use a vacation.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I'll take care of that for you, buddy. So anyway, just feel free to create in the sculpture. You're not bound by anything. You're the creator. You decide, and so that's what I'm doing right now. We're just trying to make a good looking zombie. So I'm taking it all from rough to more finished together, because what I found, and what I think the mistake a lot of people make when they're sculpting, is they'll refine something, they go, oh, those eyes look really good, and they'll spend an hour and a half, and then they get down the road with finishing off some of the other stuff, and they realize their anatomy's wrong. It's like, oh no. And so what happens to most, kind of starting sculptors is they just can't bear to redo it because of the time they put in, and so it ends up being, it's like, it doesn't look right, the anatomy's wrong. So I would encourage you to resist the urge, which is a strong urge, to finish something really good and then move on and finish, so try to work on it all together. That's why I'm skipping all around. I'm working on it, roughing it, tightening up the whole sculpture, so that if some point I'm realizing, ooh, that's not right, I can just go, but if I just spent an hour and a half and went, that's rough duty. So that's why, but it's nice because when it starts to come together, it comes together quickly, because you're refining all of it at the same time, and you're getting it tighter and tighter, and then you know what's going on in your brain. For somebody watching, it's like, well, that's rough, but it's all right. Take your time. It's better to go down the journey and learn a lot as you go, rather than either have something done quickly or have it not quite right because you just couldn't stand to work on it anymore. Just enjoy the process, as they say. It's more about the journey. That's a bunch of crap. But anyway, I'm always living in the past or the future, so I just, but it's true. I mean, you should enjoy the journey and all that. I just don't normally. Okay, this is another little trick I developed. I'm not sure if other people use it, but I'll take little balls. You get your shapes and everything, but flesh, actually, especially if it's not doing well, it gets a little, the planes aren't always smooth. So I'll just kind of randomly put different size, and you'll barely notice this actually. Now some of them you could leave and it's, like a wart or something, leave big, but a lot of them I'll just put them on and give it surface irregularity, and then I'll come back in my next technique that I think I developed, but who knows, there's a lot of sculptors out there. It works for me, and it is to wet the sculpture down and move it around with sponges, and that seems to work pretty well to get a real organic feel quickly. I'm just putting these little lumps of clay everywhere, and like I say, a lot of it, you just won't see much of it once I'm done, but it seems to help, and it doesn't take long. So now I'm going to wet it down and use the water and the sponges and brushes to kind of move the clay along and just try to get a organic feel to it. This of course gets rid of all your rake marks and things. But I've found, for me anyway, this is a very expedient way to get a realistic look to it quickly. You just got to watch it a little bit, because you can turn your sculpture into mud, you can keep brushing, and pretty soon you've obliterated your work. So yeah, we're not doing that. We're just getting it smoothed out right now and workable. You just want to kind of lightly get rid of your rake marks and just get it kind of a little bit muddy. And that's why a lot of these lines I went in super long. I went in longer than, or deeper I should say, than need be, because they'll be actually softened so much I'll have to come back and bring them in. But that's okay, because the technique works pretty good. So basically right now I'm just getting some of the dirty water out of here so I can see. And then I'm going to get a little smaller brush. This has semi-stiff bristles. It's still soft, but they're stiff enough that you can actually move the clay around a little bit. So I'm using just a natural sponge, small natural sponge. You can get these at hobby stores and things. And this will give you some skin texture as well as move around these wrinkles. if you can see what I'm doing to those forehead wrinkles, I'm making them look a little more believable, and I'm knocking back those lumps so that they're not so pronounced. But it does give him kind of creepy flesh. And you, as well as watching what you do in with the amount of water, you also want to watch how much and how hard you push. It's better to push down several times and gently move the sculpture around than to push really hard and like, oops, I got to do that over. Just take your time. It's actually, you're doing some serious sculpting right now. You're, at least I am. I'm moving the clay around a lot and in ways that just sort of make it look real, you know, very quickly. I've gotten everything sponged in, all the large details and stuff, and we're gonna go in for finer detail, but I'm gonna dry it first with a hair dryer. Now you can use a fan, you can put a fan on it, just don't leave it too long. You know, you might put a fan on it for a half hour or something, blowing right on it until the surface is pretty stiff, not hard by any means, you're still sculpting. So I'm gonna take it a little faster with the hair dryer and we'll detail it in just a minute. So I'm using a rake right now. These are fairly stiff, these are lighter, I'm just bringing in some aging and wrinkling. You can actually use these to smooth with, you know, you go this way and that way and so forth. Right now I'm just adding fine lines with it. It's a great tool. So I just did some housekeeping, got the little white dried clay off. As you hit it with the dryer, all the little flakes come off and you can dry them and knock them off with a paintbrush or I was using a little rake, and also adding some lines. Now I like to take the palms of my hands and fingers and get some smooth areas where the bone is and the skin stretching, it would be smooth along the edge. So it breaks up having the skin look all the same. And so, but also it makes sense that it would be stretched and wouldn't be as wrinkly in certain areas. Okay, so that's it. Now we're gonna paint this with the Krylon Leather Brown gloss and let that dry maybe overnight, and then we'll make a mold. We're gonna spend a little more time on the mold because some people are having trouble with molds, and man, you don't want to spend all this time sculpting and then have it ruined. So we're gonna go over that next. Then we're gonna pour it, pull it, cut it, paint it, And the final episode, so there's a 4-episode situation. The final episode, we're going to show you how to make a zombie costume. So when you're done, you'll know it all. So if you like these sorts of videos, please subscribe, comment, but only if it's nice. And no, that's it. Say whatever you want, I don't care. However, I'll come as this guy to your house late at night if you say something nasty. That's it, guys. Talk to you soon. Subscribe or die! Press like too.